Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ruck Up Buttercup. I am here today with Sabrina and a special guest. This is kind of a different topic for us because we typically just really focus on everyday military life, but this topic that we're going to discuss a little later in the episode is something that I think is really important for anybody to hear about, but specifically our military spouses, whether they're overseas or at home, and just in today's society. It's just so important. Today we are here with retired Command Sergeant Major Bart Womack, who has a fascinating story. He's experienced some of the, you know, everyday military life things in his 29 years of experience, but he has also experienced some of the most crazy things that have happened in service that you can imagine. A lot of it's like movie made, and he'll talk about a little bit of that. But Bart, welcome to our show.
All right. Thank you for having me, Ashley. Good to be here.
Great. So I did mention that you served over 29 years. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. Awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your time in service and all the things? Because like me and Sabrina, he wears a lot of hats, and I love that. And he is a huge advocate for veterans as well. So explain, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wow. So what's this year? 2005, six. So actually, at the end of this month will be 19 years out of the military. So after the 29 and a half years. So I joined when I was 12. That's why I look like this. Where do I start with that career? I think I'll start near the middle-ish, I guess. I was in Korea, left Korea, as a staff sergeant, and assigned to the old guard, where I was selected to be at the Two Men Unknown Soldier, where I was relief commander. So when you go down there, you see the guy that inspects the weapon. I did that. Then I went to be a platoon sergeant. Then I came back to be the sergeant of the guard. So that's the guy you see on Memorial Day and Veterans Day that's holding the wreath, and the president or the president's designee is on the other side of that wreath. So that's kind of a big highlight. Had been a drill sergeant prior to that. Was actually in a firefight in Korea, a story that's kind of untold, that where a person had defected from China coming through North Korea, and we got in a firefight with the KPA. People think after the Korean War that everything kind of ended. There's been a few incidents up there, but that was one of them where, lives were lost on both sides. So, but again, one of those untold stories. I left the old guard and went to Hawaii. Then from Hawaii to, I was the first sergeant in RTB, the Florida Phase of Ranger School. Then from there to the Sergeant Major's Academy. And then all my time as a command sergeant major at the 101st Airborne Division. Just in case you forget what that looks like.
And we're, you know what, you are talking to, well, at least I'm an airborne girly. My family is all airborne. My husband's still airborne. So that is, a legacy for sure. And so you already mentioned like one incident and how you said untold stories. And I think that's something that you're very passionate about, that I've kind of gathered just from our few conversations, your website and things like that, is untold stories and making sure those voices are heard. Can you tell us a little bit, since you've gotten out of the military, you've done a lot of advocating for veterans, and you have a book, you have things in the pipeline that are working. Can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, before I get to the contents of the book, I would tell you that I was a shy kid who joined the military. I just turned 18. I've been 18 for 2 months. And if you had told me that I would have been writing a book or doing anything that I've done, I think in this life, during the military and post-military, I would say you got to be crazy. I did not have the courage to do that. I didn't know that I was even capable of doing anything like that. So, but that extends to telling the story of which the book is about. I didn't know anything about that either. But my point to all this is that the military definitely gave me the confidence and courage to do just about anything. I mean, and I do mean anything that I wanted to put my mind to. Now, I can't go out and be a surgeon, but I guess I could have gone to school, to do that. But it gave me the confidence that if I go to school, I can do anything I want to do if that's what's required, that education. But the same thing was true with this book. So it was and something I didn't touch on when I left the military. I mean, I left Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and drove straight to, I say, close to Beverly, in Beverly Hills, California, to pursue acting and military technical advisor. But it is that confidence that I got from the military that said, I can go do this. I am prepared to do this. I trained a little bit in Nashville before I went. But and I knew I would continue to be trained as an actor when I got out there to get in classes and everything. But the point is that overall confidence that I could do it. And I wanted to show soldiers that were still in, as well as service members that were out, that with that military training, you too can do anything that you want to do. You should have the confidence to do that.
I love that you're saying this because I think was it our last podcast that we talked about this, Sabrina? Like where like the military can really truly open so many doors, not just for service members, but for military spouses as well. And that like just kind of like solidifying that like it is true. Like if you want to do any type of job, like the military is such a great way to get that experience, to get that knowledge. And I love that because it really is a great platform to move on. I didn't know the acting career part. That's so fascinating, Bart. I'm so intrigued right now. Like on that, I've seen, well, you've seen people do that, like the military, like for the military movies and things like that. So okay, so you California, you've done all that. What else has been happening?
Yeah, but that second part was really just to emphasize the confidence. And that's the thing that the military did for me, was give me that confidence. And to turn off a no just means next. But it's that confidence. And I like to think that I instilled that in all my soldiers. Now they will have to tell you whether they actually stuck or not. I definitely led that way. We were talking about lead by the example. I definitely led that way, that you can. If I can do it, you can do it, mentality. But before leaving the military, which I left in 2006, we were deployed to Iraq in 2003. And while deployed there, we had been on a camp at Camp Pennsylvania there in Kuwait for about 20 days, 22 days or something like that. And then March 23rd, 2003, we were attacked. I was sitting in my tent. It was myself, the commander, and the executive officer that slept in one tent. And to set this up in Camp Pennsylvania, we had about 5,000 people in the camp. I am the command sergeant major of the 1st Brigade Combat Team at 101st Airborne Division Air Assault. And so all of our brigade combat team is on this camp, and roughly 5,000 people. Plus, we had another battalion there, a support battalion that was there that made up kind of that 5,000 number. And the headquarters, you got just picture them in the middle of this camp, and the camp is about 10 football fields large, probably larger than that, but hopefully that paints a picture. The camp is surrounded by a 12-foot tall berm, dirt berm, on a slant. So you'd have to come up that slant to kind of get in there at the top of concertina wire, and several guard posts throughout the camp. But early morning hours of March 23rd, 2003, I'm sitting in a tent. I'm watching Tiger Woods play golf. Our ammo just came earlier that day. I am loading ammunition. And this object comes into the tent. I don't necessarily see the object come in, but I see sparks from the object. And I'm thinking it's a grenade of some type, and we're under attack of some type. We're in Atlanta, not quite right. So that grenade is sparking before it explodes. Our executive officer is in the tent. He was on the other side of the table so he could see what I saw, but the commander was asleep. So this is the earliest he had gone to bed. He went to bed about 2,200 hours, and which is the earliest the whole time we had been there. So I see those sparks that jump up, go to the back of the tent to wake them up, say, hey, we got to get out. There's a grenade up front about to explode. So these tempered tents have and they're called tempered because they have a air conditioning heating unit. And that was in the back of the tent. So the back is all tied up, and that's where he slept. So you really can't get out of the back. You got to go out one exit, which was the front. So I said, get up, get dressed. Well, get your boots on, and we got to get out of here. Who cares if you have on clothes? But I said, I'm gonna count to three and we're gonna run. So I count to three and we take off running down the middle aisle of the tent. And I'm running like this because this is the side that the grenade came in on. And when I was sitting there, I was watching Tiger Woods play golf. I'm loading ammunition, and it's under this fluorescent light, just bright as day. But by the time I get to the back and I say 1, 2, 3, go, it's dark as I don't know what. I tell people, close your eyes, take 100 mile an hour tape and wrap that around your head, around your eyes, and that's how dark it was. And we're running down the aisle. I get outside, he's not there. And I turn around, I'm looking. Now we're under attack, so I'm just not hollering for him. I'm kind of whispering, low tones, calling his name, sir, sir. Then I hear a gunshot. And I know The gunshot is coming from the vicinity of my tent, and I know that it's the executive officer that's been shot. I hear a yell after that. I pull out my weapon and cock it. Now, again, all the ammo is on the table, so my weapon has a magazine in it, but it doesn't have any rounds in it. So when you try to cock it, it goes instead of chambering around. No rounds chamber. So I realize I can't fight without ammunition. The TOC is about 20 yards behind me. I run to the TOC to get a weapon, night vision goggles, and ammunition. I put people in protective posture to guard the TOC and all of its entrances. I finally get that weapon and ammo and everything. I come back out, go to my tent, and they're not there. The command order executive officer not in the tent. And no one's outside at this particular time. Even though we have a whole headquarters unit in that vicinity, like no one's outside. So it's this eerie feeling. You're looking for the enemy, but you can't identify them. There's nothing there. There's no one outside. And so I go back in the top, send someone to go in the vicinity of my tent to look for the commander and executive officer. Well, I go back out and look for the enemy. I felt it best that we kind of separate and, divide and conquer. This time when I go out, there's more people out. And I'm challenged, who's there? I know when that's happening, someone's pointing a weapon at you, even though you can't see them. It's one of my soldiers, right? And I recognize the voice and, of course, identify myself. He said, well, Sergeant Major, what's going on? I said, I don't know. I said, Major Romaine has been shot. And he tells me that Captain Seifert been shot. So by the time I went to the top once, came back and back again, a grenade had gone off in my tent already. A second grenade had gone off into the second tent, third grenade had gone off into the third tent. It's kind of 5 tents in a row. And now the second person's been shot. So now we begin our triage of the casualties, identifying them. The people in the second tent had begun to start to get up. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, people are asleep. So they started not only to wake up, but stand up. And a grenade explodes at a 15-degree radius. So if you're below that 15 degrees, you're probably safe. But if you're above that, you're going to catch shrapnel. So people in the second tent began to stand up and, got quite a bit of shrapnel causing, devastating injuries. In the third tent, they were kind of on the move. Someone came out, which one was Captain Stephen, got shot point blank in the back. Others had made it out. One person was on his way out, realized he didn't have his ammo, went back inside the tent, which he slept in the rear of the tent, grabbed his ammo, started to come back out of the tent, and the grenade that exploded there, he was 17 inches away from the grenade. So now we have this mass casualty thing going on, this triage of, the injuries. One of the times I was in a TOC, I had called for reinforcements. I needed to ask for a platoon to come over in our vicinity to help look for the enemy. Another person had got on the radio and asked if I needed an FLA, field litter ambulance. I knew one person was shot at that particular time, so I said yes, send it in the vicinity of the TOC. So we had that evacuation going on to take them from that area to the aid station that was on the camp. From there would be medevac to the combat support hospital that was about a 1-minute flight away. So all this is going on. At the same time, we're looking for the enemy with no identification of the enemy at all. I mean, like there's no signs of the enemy. So I determined that something had to have changed in this camp overnight. Something changed. You've been here all these nights and, there was never even remotely anything that looked like a breach. And now we have this going on. And I was told that interpreters that came in the night before, and, just a few hours before. So I said, it has to be them, go find them. So we locate the interpreters, they're scared as I don't know what. And we interrogate them to learn that they have nothing to do with it. So now we're back to square one. Who's done this? Where are the insurgents? So then I begin to think that if they're this good, they can come into this camp, create all this devastation and leave no signs. We have totally underestimated the enemy that we're going to fight when we do cross the border, because these guys are freaking good.
Yeah.
So our first helicopter lands to take the casualties with a medevac helicopter. The helicopter is loaded. They take the 1 minute flight to the cache. Second helicopter lands. It's loaded. As it's being loaded, a huge explosion is in the sky. So now we begin to think that it's a coordinated attack. It's happened on the ground and in the air. That was a Scud. And presume that our Patriot battery, our division asset, shot down a Scud. That second helicopter is about to take off, and they're told that they cannot go to the cache that's 1 minute away. They have to fly 75 kilometers to a different cache. That's the flight that Captain Seifert was on, which arguably, cost him his life because he had to go so far away before his treatment could begin, in the hospital. Our commander, he's finally brought to the TOC. He was concussed from a grenade. And the reason he didn't make it out of the tent, now remember, he's just waking up, disoriented, of course. We began to run. Well, as we were coming out of the tent, as I was coming out of the tent, the grenade had come in and exploded and knocked him back into the sleep area. And that grenade exploded like right where I slept.
I can't even imagine how disorienting that would be to be like sound asleep and then have all that happen in moments. It'd be crazy.
Yeah. I don't know how much he got started in the first place. I just said 1, 2, 3, go. I knew we need to get out. But that's why he didn't make it out of the tent. Anyway, he comes out of this concussed state and says that we need to get accountability of personnel. So that radio call goes out. We learn that grenades and ammunition are missing, and so is one person, and his name is Sergeant Akbar.
My mind is blown right now. Like I don't know how I have not heard this story before. And I do understand it because I grew up military as well. I think my dad was deployed during this time frame as well. Because 2003, I was still in high school. So my mind's blown. Like how this is just like I'm please continue because I'm so fascinated. Like I'm sitting here going like I'm riveted. I'm like, what is going on? Like, how is this real life?
Yeah, and I was alive, so I knew it was real life, but how it was going on, I had no idea. Didn't even stop to process that. So now we're told that one person's missing, so grenades and ammunition. So now he is our number one suspect. So I come out of the tent with the intel officer, Major Warren. We come out kind of at the same time after receiving this news. And he had been walking around all night with his pistol in his hand, going to bunkers and kind of keeping everyone calm. And we would approach the bunker and ask who's in the bunker, and they would tell him. He'd give him some instruction, move to another one. And so when we come out of the TOC, he realizes there's a bunker that he hadn't gone to all night, so he goes toward that bunker. I go in a different direction to tell our leadership, who we're looking for. and as you were in disbelief, so were they. That you mean it's one of our own? I said, yeah, that's what we believe right now. So you think about this, and this camp has 5,000 people. You have the headquarters in the middle. So we have all our subordinate units all around us. And now we're looking for one of our own who is wearing the same uniform. Like, how do you figure that out? Like how do you approach everybody to see if they committed this attack? Of course, we know we're looking for one name. So Major Warren goes to this bunker, and as he's approaching the bunker, as he had done all night, he says, who do we have here? He asks that question, and the response is Sergeant Akbar. So Akbar didn't know we're looking for him. So Major Warren has the wherewithal to holster his weapon. He keeps walking toward the bunker. Another person identifies themselves as in a bunker and says, what their name is. He keeps walking, and then he gets behind Akbar and takes him down, and that's how Akbar's captured. So I've been walking around all night. I didn't have my gear. So once he was captured and flex cuffed, I went to my tent to get my gear. And that was the first time I had gone in there, since all this had happened. And I see that one side is burned up still smoldering. I see where the grenade that exploded, excuse me, I see where it exploded and just blew my whole sleeping area up. So it clicked that had I not been watching Tiger Woods play golf and sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning, then I would have been dead. So now I'm alive and I'm infuriated. Like I want to do something to him. Like this dude tried to kill me. So although he wounded a lot of other people, and that was personal, now it's more personal because I could see me laying over there with all these shrapnel holes in me, right? So I get my gear and stuff, and I'm going to do something to this dude. I don't know what it is yet. I'll figure out when I get closer, but something is going down. And as I get there, other people are trying to bum rush him and why'd you do this? Why'd you hurt my friend? So I'm busy holding them back. So they foil my plan. Yeah. Probably a good thing. I wouldn't be talking to you and all the rest of that. But anyway, I mean that was my mentality, like an eye for an eye, period. But I didn't get to do anything. So I'm handed his weapon. I take his weapon. I smell it, and to see if it had been recently fired. Now, you know how we get a loaded weapon, we first thing we do is clear it, but I didn't clear the weapon. And the reason why is because I knew that, again, I smelled it to see if it had been recently fired, and that if the rounds in that weapon committed this attack, then I didn't want to mess with that evidence. I put it on safe, that was it. And more importantly, because when I went into my tent, I saw a piece of expended brass, and knew that had to be the brass that was from the shot fired that hit Major Romaine. So I went to take that weapon and match it up to that piece of brass. So as you may or may not know, on those rounds, there's numbers on the back, and those numbers is called a dodic. So if the numbers in that, I'm sorry, if the rounds in that magazine, those numbers match that piece of brass, that meant it was fired from that weapon, it came from the same lot, etc. So I put the weapon with the brass, put a guard on it, said, you don't leave until I relieve you. So while that's going on, I go back over to where he's apprehended. They move him to a different area. Someone had told me that, here's the grenades. What do you want me to do with those? I said, just throw them back in the bunker. That's the best place for them. And the grenades were in a protective mask carrier, taking out the protective mask and put the grenades in there. So there are still 3 frag grenades in there, as well as 1 more incendiary grenade. So if I rewind, the first grenade that came in, I think I may have said this, but just in case I didn't, that was an incendiary grenade that started a fire. I think when he threw that grenade and there was no explosion, he realized, oops, I threw the wrong one. He didn't throw an incendiary grenade the rest of the night. They were all frag grenades. So when asked why he did this, he said to keep y'all from killing our women and raping our children. So I had to pause for a moment to digest who is our, O-U-R? What does our mean when he says our? And then it clicked that because of his last name and his faith, our meant, Muslim women and Muslim children. Although seeing him in the uniform that says Army on it, realizing he had taken the same oath as I did, that whole our thing didn't translate. Yeah. I thought that oath meant our. I thought I was your our, but not so. His our was completely different.
It's really scary that someone can play that long of a game, like really just like go through the whole process, become part of your brotherhood, and you trust those people. I mean, especially during deployments, these people are your family, and to like be like, oh, I trust anybody that's on this base with me is what you should feel. That I can't even imagine. Yeah, like how scary that would be.
Yeah, I mean that's what I thought up until that time, and trust went out the window immediately. One person had said in telling CID during an investigation that he thought he saw another person running when he first came out of his tent. And but we had to decide if that was true or not true. Another person outside of our bar. He said he thought he saw two people running. Well, we caught one, but who's the other? Amongst these now 4,999 people, who's the other? But in their investigation, they said they didn't think that there was an accomplice. It was only one. But that stuck with me. One, two, to eradicate trust. Bart Womack didn't trust anybody after that.
Mm.
I don't care what uniform you wore. I don't care how well I thought I knew the people in the headquarters and everyone else. It was gone. So that night, just fast forward, that next night, I had a platoon of our own soldiers guarding the headquarters area from whatever.
Like unknown.
Another
Yeah.
another potential enemy, whether it was inside the wire or outside the wire. Now realize this platoon is guarding, their weapons are facing out from the center of the headquarters. Guess what they're facing? The rest of the people in the camp, my soldiers. So trust was out the window immediately. So what I learned from this was that no profession, level of education, ideology, or religion is above reproach. There is no profile. The insider threat is closer than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so you wrote a book. I know I'm just kind of learning all about all this as you're talking, and my husband's going to love your book, and I will be getting that for him, maybe even for Father's Day, because this is something that he loves, war stories. Obviously, as a veteran, that's what you guys all thrive off of, telling each other your war stories. So like that makes sense, but he would love this. But also we were talking about it before the show, this is becoming a movie.
Yes. So before we get to that, the reason for writing the book was because, like as you said in the beginning, I didn't know about this. Well, I knew people didn't know about it.
True.
War that same day, the Jessica Lynch convoy was commandeered. So now we have POWs for the first time in forever. They're following that. The war effort on the ground is engaging. All these events are happening the same day. This one happens at 1 o'clock in the morning. Those two things begin to happen at 8, 9, 10, and ground forces and all the effort and all the focus is on that, right? Now remember it's 2003, so you had to have saw the first thing somewhere in order to be able to follow an internet blog. So this thing happened, someone's captured, they think he did it, has to be an investigation, all this stuff. So it just went away. So that was the reason for writing the book. I wanted the world to know about this story. Now, the answer of the Patriot battery shooting down the potential Scud in the air, it was not a Scud, it was a British Tornado fighter jet returning from a mission. So now we have friendly fire. We've killed two people from an allied force by virtue of what was happening on the ground.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't initiate that. We didn't call the Patriot battery and tell them anything. It was all the stuff going on the ground. They heard gunshots, they heard explosions, and here comes this fast moving object. They figured it had to be a Scud and just shot it down. So now we got a world event going on here, and I knew the world didn't know about this story. And I wanted the world to know what happened to these service members on this night by a fellow American soldier, which means people can join the military and they have their own modus operandi to create an attack for their own belief.
Yeah.
And the takeaway was that another one was that we don't go home with them at night. Now we pride ourselves on knowing soldiers and their families and taking care of their welfare. Like we need to know everything about them to be able to accomplish those things. In this particular case, we knew nothing. I struggle with what are the signs? Like, what did we miss? What did leadership miss? Now I was never going to know from my position where I was, but the sergeants and the staff sergeants and the sergeant first class, like what did they miss? And I don't know that they truly missed anything because he had written, and I have to read this, and I always have it out to read because it's his quotes that was in his diary. In 1993, I do not like the military that have too much control over people's lives. I suppose I'm just anti-government. A Muslim should see himself as a Muslim only. His loyalty should be to Islam only. Now, I'm gonna pause here for a moment and tell you that religion doesn't pull the trigger, people do. It's their belief, it's their ideology. That's how it works. Now, they can use it as an excuse, but it's not about a particular religion. That's what he says, right? All right, 1996. Anyone who stands in front of me shall be considered the enemy and dealt with accordingly. So escalation is beginning to happen. 1996. Destroying America was my plan as a child and as a juvenile and in college. My life will not be complete unless America is destroyed. Destroying America is my greatest goal. 1998. He joins the army. So this is already planned.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
this
so
was
scary.
definitely intentional. Yeah.
Yeah. So the leadership at that level was never going to know that this was planned years before he joined the military. There was nothing that they were going to see. As long as they didn't see these quotes in his diary, they were never going to know that that they was planning an attack somewhere down the road, that he had hatred for America. All they were ever going to see, just like all of us, was his uniform he was wearing, realizing that he had to take the same oath as we all did to wear that uniform. 2003, February 2003, he writes, I am not going to do anything as long as I stay here at Fort Campbell. But as soon as I am in Iraq, I'm going to try to kill as many of them as possible. So that's what he did.
And no one had any idea of his feelings towards them. Like was he like reclusive or anything like that?
Yeah, so that's a good one. So what I struggle with, that there was some sign. Now that leadership was never going to see this
Right.
unless he
Right.
displayed it in some way. But I call it the reindeer games. Now he was kind of standoffish, didn't talk much, and all those types of things. Now, if you know that you're planning something like this down the road, you need to be kind of standoffish and not talk, because if they get you talking, the wrong things might come out of your mouth to lead to the fact that there's something, right?
Mhm.
Possibly. So, but here's what was missed. If he was, in fact, not doing everything that everyone else did. I call it playing a reindeer game. So if they were playing a sport, or they were playing football, or they were doing some activity that wasn't mandatory, and they said, hey, let's go do this as a platoon, and he was never doing it while in Kuwait, ready to deploy into Iraq for this war, to me, that was a sign. And it was several signs. One, it could have been, I'm scared to go fight this war. I'm just genuinely afraid. One. Two, I'm deployed. Could be an issue that I just got from a phone call, that there's something wrong with my family, family members, something like that. Could have been that, right? Could have, an array of things that could be a sign as to why he didn't want to do these things with everybody else. My point to this is that some things beg a question. That sign of not playing in the reindeer games begs a question. And now you get to find out if it's a family member thing, or if it's I'm scared to go fight this war. You ask a question, there's going to be an answer.
Yeah,
Then
there should have been some
evaluate
sort
the
of
answer. That's right.
interaction. Yeah.
Then you evaluate the answer to see if there's a follow-up question. Some actions beg a question. And that's how we get to, combating or mitigating attacks.
Mhm.
By asking questions based on what we see, what's given to us, and we ask a question about it. More about that later, but that's the start of it. So I do think that was missed somewhere. Did it mean the answer was, I'm going to kill you guys as soon as ammo comes? Probably not. He was on guard. The ammo came that day. He volunteered to guard the ammo. He's with someone else and said, hey, I got this. I'll take the rest of these, our time on guard duty. You go to sleep. I'll stay on until we're relieved. And we took that opportunity to start opening up the ammo and getting grenades and everything, and commit the attack. Now, with that, where that particular unit was on the camp, it's about 300 meters from where the headquarters was. So he had at his disposal, if you will, some 800 people from that unit of which he was assigned to commit an attack on, and which all were asleep.
Yeah.
And the way the setup was, would have been a lot easier. But no, he came all the way across the desert, 300 meters, to attack their headquarters. In the mindset of take out the headquarters, the body will follow. The body is is the demeanor, attitude, motivation of the soldiers. And it worked to a degree. I mean, it did work. I had to mitigate the mindset and attitude of the soldiers, because during the investigation of CID, they're all just kind of sitting along this wall, grieving, head down, all these things that they're expected to do. And then I had seen enough of them and said, get up, get out of here. I know you got to grieve, but I mean, to my eyes, I saw a unit that could not cross this border 6 kilometers on whatever day we were going to do it and fight the war. That unit could not,
Mhm.
and I had the
They weren't
mindset.
mentally prepared anymore.
That's
Yeah.
right. So I didn't want to see that. Not a unit that I had trained and built all this time. Like, I can't take it. Get out of here. Go somewhere. Just, I know you got to do it, but don't do it here. So my point is, it worked.
Yeah.
He took out parts of the headquarters and took out the mind and spirit for, a little while. Yeah. But this was planned all along.
It's just crazy to think that and there isn't any way to catch it. Like you said, it's not like they would see the journals. Like they can't read your mind. These people that come in and have that extremist like mentality, but there was steps like you were talking about, and there are steps to like situational awareness, which is what I know you wanted to talk about, is that like should we have asked more questions? Should we have figured out what state that guy was in before we got to this point?
Yeah, I come to you now after years of this, always thinking that there was something that was missed. I
Mhm.
don't think that will ever leave me. But it got me into this work of writing a book and telling the story. But while I was doing that, I put these proactive situational awareness strategies in the book. And the book was published in 2013. But the story is as relevant now, 22 years later, as it was in 2003, as it was in 2013. So as I was writing the book, I began to follow, okay, what other stories are relatable to this one in terms of there being signs that show the potential of something, and how can I use those other stories to mitigate it? So I just began to follow stories. And one that was first was that this 19-year-old student, now again, this is in the preparation of the book, we're probably 2011, 2012, again, published in 2013. This 19-year-old student that attended Portland State University was planning an attack at a Christmas tree lighting ceremony in Portland. And if you ask for a certain amount of explosives, like on the internet, start Googling for that, you get connected and you start asking for a whole bunch of stuff, then you are automatically kind of transferred over to federal agents who pose as a foreign terrorist organization. Say, yeah, brother, what you need? I got you. I'll give it to you. Meet me here. Here it is. What do you need? You need a van? Here it is. Need a detonator? Here it is. Need explosive? Here it is. Now, they're not giving it to them, but the
Right.
person thinks that they're getting it. And so this is what happened. So you got all that stuff, put the van there, hit the detonator, nothing happened, of course. But as soon as you squeeze, you, in essence, committed the attack. So now they got you. And when asked why here, he said, well, it's Portland. This happened in 2010. Yeah, 2010. He said, well, it's Portland. No one's watching Portland.
Probably true. Yeah.
Almost 10 years after 911, that focuses on, okay, maybe still New York, maybe Dallas, Chicago, Atlanta, DC again, big cities, not
Mhm.
Portland. So we figured no one's watching Portland. Then the next one really got me because it was a military person. And well, the second military person. I'll go to the second one now, go back to the first one. This military person was a colonel in the Royal Canadian Air Force. He had guarded the Queen, so he'd been highly regarded. He was in charge of an Air Force base. But this guy, he was breaking into females' houses, stealing their underclothes. He would tie them up, put on their underclothes in front of them, then untie him, and then just leave. And he was doing this in multiple households throughout Canada, near his base. Then he go back to work next day and just the commander, lauded everything. Eventually killed two women, which one was his fellow airman, one of his soldiers, one of his airmen. So that one was obviously more relatable. But still, these are after the 2009 attack that happened at Fort Hood. Same ideology, same reasons, same everything as Akbar. Arguably inspired and motivated by Akbar, because Akbar pulled it off for the same reason. So 6 years later, Major Hassan Adollah did the same thing at Fort Hood, Texas. But all these things were relatable stories to what happened to us in March 23rd, 2003. And I began to follow those things, and they became the stories that would propel the proactive situational awareness strategies. And that was kind of my hook, if you will. You get the story, but now you get an education to prevent these things from happening in your everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
So those strategies are, first one is trust no one. I trusted that the same people who took the oath that I did, that would be for the same reasons. All that stuff backfired. So I don't care what you wear, what you do, what you say, you got to show me every day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not giving you nothing. There's no one person in my life that knows everything about me. I'm not giving them nothing. Unfortunately, I had to go fortunately for me, I'm going to say fortunately for me, I will go to my grave with that mentality. You're just not going to get it.
Well, and that kind of circles back to what we definitely talk about a lot with our military spouses is PERSEC, and that like don't put stickers on your car. You're trusting people, like giving all that information out to people is trusting that they won't use it in a hostile way, which they do, and you hear about those stories, and it is definitely.
I mean, I've been a victim of being followed and things like that, from just knowing that, when we were stationed overseas, we were followed for hours by men who knew we were Americans. We didn't know if it was because we were Americans, so obviously that meant that was a soldier because we were in Europe, or because it was a family with 3 girls, or whatever the case may be. But I remember my dad and my mom saying, like, you guys have to lay down, do not get back up, like, and they just drove for hours and hours because they just didn't want us to follow us to where we were going. Now, this was shortly after 9/11, and they were Muslim descent. We could tell that they were speaking Arabic and things like that. So it was a very scary situation. But, even my husband has had experience while deployed with service members who have been very radical. And thankfully, they were paying attention to signs, and they did take steps to remove that person from their unit. Now, this was someone who's being radical in a completely different aspect, like wasn't Muslim or anything like that, but they were being very radical and basing it off of their religion, and put a lot of them in harm's way, including my husband, like shot at my husband and his commander at the time. Like they had to dive underneath the truck. He was like, oh, that was unintentional. But I mean, like, he went after someone with, he was Noric paganism or something like that. He had like hatchets and all these other things on this deployment. And it was just constant craziness. And so, but they were like, this guy is going to kill somebody. He has to be removed from our unit. And thankfully they saw those signs and they took those steps to remove him out of that area, because it just kind of progressed. But yeah, you can't just advertise. And we do talk about that a lot. Like, don't put like I'm a military spouse, or, if you're out, especially if your service member is not home, like don't advertise that he's gone. And I think that's so hard to do today, because so many people are like making posts on TikToks and Instagram, like, oh, my husband's deployed, poor me. But they're not thinking of the things like, your geotags on your photos. Like they can tell you exactly where you are. You're taking a picture of the front of your house. You're taking a picture at a local place that's really well known. So it's really easy to figure out where it's at. And so, and I know that I do this at times too. Like there are times where I'm like, oh, dang, like I just posted that my husband's gone for 6 weeks. And I just posted that we're on a hike by ourselves at this really well-known place. Like, that probably isn't the best thing to do. So it's something that you have to kind of be constantly thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, even influence who do that stuff to get paid for it well, they still have to worry about their security, and they're beginning to worry about their security.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the people who don't post, and maybe some of them do to a degree, but they don't have to post because the whole world knows their schedule, and that's NBA and NFL players, and now people are getting to break into the house because they're at a away game. They didn't have to post it; it's on the schedule. And they're like, okay, let's just take a chance to see. Oh, we were able to break into one, let's do some others. So but if you're not an influencer getting paid for, at least they're getting paid, they can, afford security. Then
Mm-hmm.
what we have to get out of this whole thing of, hey world, look at me, this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm at now. You'll never see. I mean, I don't do the Facebook thing, so people are gonna know that. I'm even I apply the same thing to where I'm speaking at.
Mm-hmm.
Like I might say, okay, I'm speaking that event on that day, whatever. But that's like okay, I know I have to create a brand, but at the same time, that be careful with that. And I'm a guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I had to live by what I preach. I had to I'm practicing what I preach. So, but for women, I mean, like why does everyone need to know where you are and what you're doing? And but like, who cares? If you want your friends to know, then text them and tell them. But the world doesn't need to know. You're just setting yourself up. And it's like, well, let me keep doing it until someone does something, as opposed to, well, nothing's happened, so I'm gonna keep doing it. No, that's not
Right.
how you should be. That's not
You
how
don't
you
want to
should
learn
be.
the lesson that way. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lesson for the world after this attack, the takeaway for the world is that if it happened in the close-knit brotherhood of armed forces, it can happen in any campus, community, or workplace at any time and anywhere. Domestic terrorism is our new reality.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway for the world. So it starts with that. Why I say trust no one. Now I know you're gonna think about that and say, well, Bart, you have to trust somebody. I don't know that you have to. Maybe you want to. Maybe in some cases you need to share something with someone. I would say don't confuse trust with an expectation that you may have with
Mm-hmm.
a coworker, with anyone that's in your life. Maybe you expect them to do certain things because you think you know them well or whatever the case may be. But if we just put this on a spectrum of the military, I know you expect that fellow service member to do certain things based on their rank, intelligence, and loyalty, and blah 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 values. But don't be confused that your internal values are the same as theirs just because we've put on a board here what the Army values are, or
Yeah.
what the values are, or what your work values are. Don't think that everyone's doing that just because they wear a uniform.
Well,
I
and I
don't
think
think
that's
the uniform is a military uniform, is uniform is what people come to work in at corporate America. To me,
yep.
it's the same thing. If they
Yep.
post values or whatever, and you're a person who would abide by values because you're value based, don't think that the person in the cubicle beside you lives like that. They
Mhm.
don't.
Well, and the military itself is such a collection of so many different backgrounds, so many different beliefs, so much that there is never going to be that same. And there's always going to be like, conflicts. I mean, I know my husband personally struggles with this because he is that like you signed up for this, like you should be living by these rules. And he doesn't take that lightly. Like, I mean, again, we come from a long line of military members, though. So, like, this has been instilled to us since we were born. Like, these are the values you should be doing. But, just, in the 18 years he's been in and the 36 years, 37 years we've both been in the service as kids, you're not going to be able to do that. And even if you think you know someone, like I know my husband thinks he knows someone, and like I'll use like his battle buddy that he had during basic training, stuff like that. And they ended up getting stationed together. I despised that man. I thought he was a horrible human being. He treated women like crap. But my husband, he just saw battle buddy. He just saw this is the person that I went through basic. We went through AIT, we went through airborne school, and now we are stationed together. And we went on our first deployment it was like 2009, I think was their first deployment. And this is my guy. This is who I trust him with my life. And I'm just like, have you met the person? And thankfully he finally kind of came to he started to see the things. Like it took a little while, but it took him time to see that this person was not the best person. He wasn't very good at human being. He didn't care about anybody else but himself. And he had to learn the hard way, unfortunately. And I feel like a lot of our service members do that. Like they're like, oh, I thought this person was a good person. Like I thought he was here to support and, you know, all this other kind of stuff. And it's it's crazy that you kind of have to have that mentality of like, I can't trust anybody, but you do have to have that until you've earned that trust, until you have experienced those things together and have learned all those things. Like you can't trust anyone just because of their rank. Like I don't expect anyone to go in to my husband as a first sergeant saying, I trust this man until he has shown them that he can be trusted. He can be that person they can lean on and train and things like that. So I think that's a great tip. And I think that's really good for military spouses to hear too, that sometimes there is bad leadership. Sometimes there is bad, you know, even just at platoon level or your squad mates, like they may not be, unfortunately, in a great environment and they just have to do what's best for them in those sense to the extent of your ability. I know because you don't have a lot of wiggle room as service members, but you know, have spouses having that grace of knowing that it's not that way forever.
Yeah, trust is one thing, and expectation is another. I expect based on certain things that they are to do whatever. But then when as soon as they don't do it, then I'll see even that expectation goes away. We haven't gotten to trust yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand how people can have expectations. Don't confuse that with trust. So when I say trust no one, I know they're going to think about that. And I want them to think about it because I want them to develop what trust really is to them and just develop how they employ it. The next one is observe, listen, and report. I think that anybody in any situation, in this situational awareness, they need to do these three things. And if you are doing two of them well, then you are closer to mitigating something. Two of them will be close to mitigating something. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier, I forget in which context, but when I was working in Hollywood, I was a property manager for an apartment building right across the street from UCLA. When I first took over, came out this one door. I wasn't planning to do this, but I came out this door and realized that at that particular hour that the light was supposed to come on automatically, right? So it's like January, 4:30 p.m., starting to get dusk or whatever, dark early, right? Because of the month. And the light didn't come on.
Mm-hmm.
So when another door came out and that light didn't come on. So I got a pen and paper, came outside, stood in front of the building and looked at started taking inventory of lights that should be on that wasn't on so I could get the problem fixed, right? And when I'm writing, and this is 2007, when I'm writing, so long before the book, I say to myself, if anyone's watching me right now, they should think this is suspicious behavior. It's casing. I'm casing the building.
Yeah.
It could look like I'm casing the building. I go in another door, come out, do the same thing. Now I realize apartment buildings here right across the street from UCLA. Apartment building has 60 units. I have one, two others were older adults, I should say, because the rest were students that went to UCLA. I mean, right across the street. And frat house on the right, frat house on the left. So I go back in. Now I start checking interior lights, right? Writing down the efficiencies. So when I make an order, I can make one order. When I get to the top floor here, freeze. Well, I've been around long enough to know when you hear freeze, that means that someone's behind you with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
They identify themselves as police officers. I hear the voice sounds younger than mine. Says, okay, I don't want there to be no accidents or whatever. I'm complying. And, I don't want no itchy fingers. So they say, put up your hands, drop the pen, drop the paper, hands behind your head, and handcuff me or sit down. And they say, well, you look like you fit the description of someone that was called in. I said, no, I am the description.
Mm-hmm.
I already told myself that. I am the description. I'm the apartment building manager, and I was taking inventory or whatever, and that's what was reported, I presume. And, so I give my ID, give my military ID, and now they start calling me Command Sergeant Major after that. I said, yeah, that's great, but if I ever call you for something in this building, I want you to come as fast as you did for this particular call. And I'm not sure why there had to be 5 police officers show up with guns drawn for a person who's armed with a pen and a piece of paper. And I digress. That's a different story. But again, I want you to come in here as fast if I call you when I say something wrong. Point is, someone was observing. There was nothing for them to hear, and they reported it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the point.
I do think that like you're saying, if you do both those steps, but I think a lot of people skip that reporting step. And I know I'm guilty of it. I'll see weird things in a parking lot and I'll be like, okay, let's just go home. Like, I don't want to be involved with that. kind of situation. And I think that's kind of embedded, at least in America, that we're very like, just leave people to their own thing. And I think it's a little different in Europe. I do feel like in Europe, as you see something, those people are nosy as heck, at least in Germany, and they're like, we're calling the cops. Like, that's super shady. And I think we need to get more into that mentality of like, if it seems odd, maybe we should report it, because a cop coming out and talking to them and it being an innocent situation like yours where they're just looking at lights is better than, a cop coming out and finding out that a bunch of girls were tied down in the room upstairs, right? Like,
Well, and I
I,
think it's,
I think when you see it,
yeah.
your mind will tell you what should happen. And I say, there's three things there. I say two of those things is the things that we need to do based on what we see in the situation and all that type of stuff. And like I said, in this particular case, they observed there was nothing to listen to and they reported. So they did two of them. I think the report has to happen. That has to happen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you listen and report, which is another one that I'm going to talk about here. But here's a case where, and I talk about the report and the result of the report of not being so bad, which says that you can report. And so here's another one. A female student in a college campus heard what she thought was gunshots. Calls the police, says there's an active shooter on my campus. If you do that call on a campus, like the whole world's coming. Your campus police, the neighbor, the city, the county, everybody's showing up. They had helicopters in the air and everything. Well, fast forward, it turned out to be, and they get there and they can't find anything. No bullet holes, no nothing. It turned out to be someone in their dorm room popping plastic.
Mm.
Pop, 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 pop. But to her, it sounded like gunshots. I'd rather the whole world comes out and responds to the plastic pops than it being gunshots and no one called anybody or did
Just
anything.
finding it the next day.
The worst that happened was they used some gasoline. They had helicopters there and they used that gas. It cost more, but that was the worst. Yeah, they're mad, but okay, so it was a good drill for you. That's the worst. So I'll move on to the next one, which is know your neighbor. And when I say that, not just the person next door, I mean your coworker, your fellow service member, your fellow student. The more you know about them, the more they're going to talk and tell you. Whether it was something that happened on the way to work, I got cut off, I got the driver's license number, I know a private detective, I'm gonna look them up, I'm going after them, I'm gonna go. They will tell you everything in their life if you get to know them.
Yep.
You're not be their best friend, just get to know people because they will tell you things and you'll begin to observe more.
Well, knowing your neighbors, specifically your actual neighbors, I think is important because like I want my neighbors to know who my kids are, because if there's a situation, I don't want them to ignore them when they ring the doorbell, right? Like, I want them to be like, oh, this is that kid from down the street,
Right.
and understand that like
Yeah.
these are people that we can, not trust, like you're saying, but like people that we can go to because they are close to us. They know where we live. They know, like, if they call the cop, they can bring him inside and the cop wait until the cop gets there, kind of situation, because they know where we live.
Next one is listen, don't just hear. I worked at a military college. Students are in the classroom, 19-year-old sophomores, criminal justice class to get on a subject of talking about guns. And a few of them say, well, I have a gun, I have a gun. And another kid says, I have a gun, I have AK-47. Then he says, it's in the trunk of my car. And there's a professor in the room and everything, and other students. One person was listening, and when he said it's in the trunk of my car, he said it sounded a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Everyone else in the classroom, to include the professor, knowing that you're not allowed firearms on the campus, didn't hear it that way. Wasn't listening, didn't do anything. But the student who was listening, not just hearing, came back after that class and reported to me that, hey, we were in class, this is what happened. I don't know what you're going to do with it. It sounded a matter of fact. So, okay, waited for the student to come back that he was talking about, walked into his car. We got about 100 yards from his car. He said, I just want you to know before we get to my car, I have an AK-47 in the trunk of my car. Now, no ill will was planned. He had purchased the weapon legally in New Jersey and went home on the weekend from school, came back on that Sunday with the weapon in his car. He was going to take it to a fellow student's house to take over that person's dad's house who lived in a rural area, was going to keep the weapon locked up. They would come out there on the weekends and shoot it.
Yeah.
But they must link up on Sunday.
Yeah.
We had to keep it in his car. The next day just happened to be the day they're talking about guns in this class. That's the day you close your mouth.
Yeah. Well, and
Oh,
I feel like it was just odd that he was like, yeah, I have like AK-47. Like, just say, yeah,
yeah,
no, I have a gun. Like, I think it's like, some people like to boast about that, like, especially if they're in the gun world, like if they're into competitions and things like that. Like, hey, yeah, no, I have this gun, but like, it's not something that you should, especially in today's society in the US, because there's such a, well, like if you have an AK-47, you're unstable, you're going to go do a shooting. And that's not the case. But it's good that that student did say, hey, that was weird. Like, why did he say that? And you're right that you should report those things. Um,
yeah. It wasn't just that he said it, it was that it's in the trunk of my car, like
yeah,
now.
yeah,
And everyone knows that his car is there. But the point is the adult was
did,
not listening.
yeah,
So the emphasis here is to listen, don't just hear. So while you're knowing that neighbor and all these interactions, you need to pay attention to what's coming out of people's mouths.
yep,
So we talk about a sign, they will tell you, but only if you're being situational aware and you're applying these strategies. Because if you're not, then it doesn't matter what they're saying or even what they're doing if you're not paying attention. So that is the emphasis of the situational awareness. So this kind of breaks it all down. We can say situational awareness, but oh yeah, but if you don't know what it means, you have no context to kind of
yeah.
break it down and make it easier for you because
Mhm.
that's situational awareness,
And
then it's going to be tough. And
yeah,
then the next one is just the overall gut check. Like,
yeah,
what's your
that's what I was gonna say.
gut
Like, if you
Right.
have a bad feeling about something, and if you maybe you didn't think you heard it, like, because I know I question that, like, did I hear that right? Like,
Mhm.
if it feels like in your gut that, ooh, that just wasn't right, report it. The what's the worst that's gonna happen is that person's gonna be questioned, and if it was what you think it is, then it's handled and it's good. And if it's not, then it's just going like, oh man, like, oh, I thought it was a joke. Like, I did say that, but like I was kind of joking, like, yeah, it's in my car, but the other person didn't take it that way. Like, and I feel like, and I think moms and spouses, I mean, I know for myself, but for moms specifically, like if I just have a bad feeling about someone, like we went to dinner the other night and I just had a bad feeling about a person. And I don't know if it was just because I thought he looked at my daughter weird or whatever it was. And I went over to my husband. I was just like, hey, switch seats with me. So that way you can keep an eye on him. And if anything, like I was like, it could have just been a weird look and I just looked at it wrong. But I was like, if we see it again, I want to make sure that this is handled and we report it. And thankfully, I think it was just like he kind of looked down and I just kind of caught it at the wrong time. Cause like they left, like I kept my husband kept his eyes on the group the whole time. I did the same thing. They left like way before we didn't see him again. So I was like, okay, so then maybe that was just my mom intuition. I don't know. But I think that's so important that you do keep that intuition.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of, observing things in that manner and talking about them or thinking it's just a joke or whatever, a student, I want to say 14 years old, he had told a fellow student, hey, don't come to school on this day because I'm going to shoot it up. But the student was listening, not just hearing, and reported it.
Mm-hmm.
Then come to find out the student he was a foreign exchange student. He had bought different parts of a gun and put it together as one, had over 1,500 rounds of ammunition, and, so definitely capable of committing this attack. But when caught, once reported and caught, he said, oh, I was just joking. So we don't joke anymore.
No.
Remember when 911, well, before 911, we would say, that's the bomb. Oh,
Yeah.
that's the bomb. But
Yep.
that was cool. It was this, it was a whole bunch of things. But after 911, you can't say bomb in the airport. So we couldn't say that's the bomb, meaning cool in the airport anymore.
Yep.
It was just eradicated. So people, they took it a step further, like, we're not even gonna say it at all. They said airports, we're not gonna say it at all. So then we had to come out of stuff that's dope, it's cool, it's rad, it's this, is the but one thing it ain't the bomb.
Yeah.
So my
I
point
mean,
is,
that's why all these kids come up with all these crazy slogans.
sit, whatever it is, it's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of things, but it ain't the bomb. So, but the point is, it's true about everything else. We don't joke about anything anymore. When someone says, we have to expect it.
Yep.
So for your female audience abroad, when that guy that they're dating or seeing is saying that they're going to do something that if you don't love me, then you won't ever love anybody else. That's something, and especially if you guys are on the brink of breaking up or whatever, like they mean that. They are telling you that you will never see anyone else outside of them. And if they're saying they're going to come to work or whatever, I'll come do whatever at your job, I don't care, then they already telling you that they're coming. You just
It's
don't
already
know
a
what
threat.
day.
Yeah.
You just don't know what day it's going to be. But you have to start believing people when they say they're going to do something the first time. Don't wait for it to happen. What are you talking about? I ain't believe. No, believe them.
Yeah, you gotta believe it. You gotta, trust your intuition, trust your gut, listen. Like, and I think the reporting thing is such a good thing to say because, like, I know I'm really bad about that too. But Bart, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. I'm gonna get the book too. I just want to read it as well because, like, I literally sat here the entire time going, like, what? Like, that is insane to me. I know we didn't touch on everything, but I cannot wait to share the podcast. Can't wait to share your information with our followers and listeners. We thank you so much for taking your time today to help share the story, those untold stories as well, because it is important that we share those things and we make sure that they don't happen again. And, I think this is going to be a great episode for our spouses and our veterans who are listening alike. Do you have any last minute words? We've got about a minute left before we have to hop off.
Well, I'll be selfish and say buy the book. One, I want you to know about the story, but more importantly, I want you to know about the situational awareness strategy. So everything I talked about, for the most part, those strategies are in the book. And it's time that we all have to do our part. It's up to us. We are the first line of defense. Law enforcement is not going to be there. They're not in the school. I don't care if you have a resource officer or not. They cannot be everywhere. They'll show up when after the bullets are flying, but they're not mitigating the bullets while they're in the air. So we are the first line of defense for all of this.
Well, that's a great way to end it, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. And like we always say, ruck up, buttercup, and we'll share all that information in our show notes.